10 bone-chilling Dogman attacks that haunt you at midnight. Real encounters never told. The moon hung like a ghostly lantern in the midnight sky, casting eerie shadows across the abandoned roads of rural America. Whispers of the Dogman, half beast, half legend, sent shivers down spines and stirred the air with foreboding. Reports of savage attacks circulated like wildfire stories about a creature that lurked behind the trees, eyes glowing with a hunger that would haunt your dreams. Imagine a creature, 7 feet tall, howling a spectral cry that echoes in the night. A chilling reminder that you're never truly alone, the kind of tale that keeps you awake, heart racing, under the blankets. The locals spoke in hushed tones, eyes darting to the woods, each story more outrageous than the last. One man claimed to have seen it during a camping trip, a hulking figure arising from the shadows, fur bristling in the moonlight. He swore he could feel its breath on his neck, hot and rancid, before it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Another woman recounted how her dog barked furiously, sensing something amiss, moments before a howl sliced through the silence, teeth glinting like daggers. These weren't tales concocted for entertainment. These were raw accounts from people who had felt the icy fingers of fear wrap tightly around their chests. Every town you enter would share one common fear: the Dogman was more than just a myth in their eyes. It was an uninvited guest, lurking just outside their doorstep. Groans of disbelief mingled with frightened gasps as more shared their experiences. Some swore they could still see the long claws that tore through fences, hear the blood-curdling screams that evoke terror worse than any horror movie. You could feel the tension rise as shadows danced on the walls and the stories wove a web of dread that seemed to cling to the very air. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But the chilling part? As the tales grew, so did the accounts of disappearances. A hiker who vanished without a trace. A child swept into the woods while playing, laughter echoing before it was snuffed out like a candle. Each story left a lingering question in the air, drawing sharp breaths and glances exchanged in fear. Would you be next? Could that shadow darting between the trees be the Dogman? The thrill of the story had only begun, but darkness loomed closer now, drawing you in with each chilling word. The night thickened around the small town of Pine Hollow, where fear lingered like heavy fog. Cabin lights flickered like frightened fireflies, daring the darkness to invade their safe spaces. Barry, a rugged former park ranger, stood at the edge of the woods, unease clawing at his insides. He was one of the few brave enough to confront the rumors claiming the Dogman had returned. Or maybe he was just too stubborn to walk away. He could still hear the terrified whispers from the townsfolk echoing in his mind. Stay away from the woods after dark, they said. It calls to you with a cry that chills the soul. Barry shook his head, scolding himself as he tightened his grip on the flashlight. You're letting stories get to you, he muttered. But as he stepped deeper into the tree-line, the atmosphere shifted, the air growing thick with tension. Moss-covered branches loomed above him, shadows casting distorted shapes, making his heart race. Flashlights flickered erratically as if sensing something unseen. Suddenly, a bone-rattling howl shattered the silence, cutting through the trees like a knife. Barry froze, his breath hitching, eyes wide. He swung the beam of his flashlight toward the sound, but darkness swallowed the light, creating a void that made his skin crawl. The echo of that howl ricocheted in his ears, a reminder of the tales told by the fireplace. Tales he had always dismissed as folklore. With pounding steps, Barry pushed forward, adrenaline surging through his veins. There had to be an explanation, or perhaps some evidence to validate the fears that gripped the town in whirlwind panic. As he tread further, he began marking his path with small bits of broken branches, reminding himself that he wasn't just some fool lost in the dark. Then came a softer sound, a rustling. It was close. Too close. Barry whipped his flashlight around, illuminating the brush ahead, but only darkness stared back at him. Each heartbeat echoed like thunder in his ears as doubt began to creep into his mind. Was something watching him? That S when he caught movement in his peripheral vision, a towering figure darting between the trees. His heart sank and legs threatened to resign, but the curiosity took hold. Barry pursued, driven by a mix of dread and intrigue. He could hear low growls, tinged with a primal menace, pushing him onward. "Get a grip, Barry. It's just a raccoon or something," he whispered to himself, but his voice faltered at the biting air. The woods seemed alive, with eyes lurking just beyond the reach of his flashlight. Then he spotted it. Just up ahead, pale eyes burned in the darkness, glowing like coals against the black backdrop of trees. Barry stood frozen, mouth dry, breath caught in his throat. The creature was indeed massive, a silhouette that seemed to ripple and pulse. It wasn't an animal he had ever seen before. Its elongated limbs and hunched back defied nature. Sudden movement broke the silence, and it lunged forward, snatching at a dead branch, snapping it with a resounding crack. Barry's heart raced faster than he thought possible. With a burst of adrenaline, he turned and ran, branches scraping against his skin, the howl echoing behind him like a twisted serenade. He burst free into the open, gasping for breath. The night felt strangely still, the woods behind him silent now, as if they were witnessing an unspoken pact, the kind that seals the fate of those who dare to interfere. But as Barry stumbled back toward town, hands trembling and heart pounding, a thought pierced through the fog of fear. The creature hadn't merely been a figment of imagination. It was real, and it was far from done. What did it want? And why now? The ground trembled slightly beneath him, as if answering his unspoken question. The darkness stretching into the woods grew menacing as the ground sank underfoot, and he felt an unsettling sense of dread. Little did he know, something far worse was looming, preparing for its next move, lurking just beyond sight. What would happen next? The thrumming anticipation tinged the air with danger, setting the stage for an unavoidable encounter. Barry burst into town, the breath of the forest still hot on his neck. He stumbled through the streets, clenching his flashlight like a lifeline, its beam flickering as if sharing his terror. The moon hung high, bathing the ground in an eerie glow, illuminating the vacant street. The stillness was unsettling, as if Pine Hollow itself was holding its breath. "Barry," came a sharp voice, breaking the heavy silence. It was Janice, the diner owner, standing at her doorstep. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." He forced out a breath, struggling to gather words. "The woods, it's back. The Dogman." Janice's expression shifted from concern to disbelief. "That's just old wives' tales, Barry. You can't let those stories get to you." But before he could protest, the air changed. A low growl, familiar yet different, rumbled from the edge of town. The sound sent a wave of freezing panic coursing through him. Janice's eyes widened, now aware the danger was real. "Get inside," Barry barked, urgency punctuating his tone. He grabbed her wrist, dragging her back toward the diner. The growl grew louder, morphing into a short, jarring howl that shook the ground. People peered from behind curtains, faces pale and drawn. "Everyone needs to get inside," Barry shouted, his voice cracking. Panic resonated. A woman dropped her groceries, and the glass jar shattered, raining colorful fragments onto the pavement. "Is it here?" someone whispered from the back. Barry nodded, heart pounding as dread washed over him. "It's not alone." The air felt electric, right before chaos erupted. From the shadows, swift as a predator, the creature lunged, eyes glowing, claws extended. It wasn't just one. Two more emerged, shadows melding into the darkness, mirroring the fear that sprawled over the townsfolk. "Get to your homes," Barry yelled, his voice growing hoarse. "Lock the doors. Now." As if spurred by an unseen force, people rushed into their houses, slamming doors and shuttering windows. The growls intensified, and each thud of clawed feet reverberated in the night, a stark reminder that the legends were true. The Dogman wasn't some myth, it was a living nightmare. And it was hungry. Barry turned, heart racing. Janice? Get in. He shoved her through the door as he glanced around for any signs of movement. What do we do? Janice's eyes darted around the diner, panic clawing at her voice. Get the shotgun. He pointed toward the back room. We need to protect the others. Before she could react, the door smashed open, splintering with a violent crack. A hulking figure filled the doorway, towering above them, eyes piercing through the darkness. The smell of wet fur and blood filled the air as it growled, every muscle in its body coiling like a spring, ready to strike. Barry! Janice screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the creature's roar. Time slowed. Every second felt like an eternity as Barry's instincts kicked in. He lunged for the creature, grabbing a nearby chair to use as a shield. It was a fool's move, but he couldn't stand still. He had to defend, he had to protect. The Dogman lunged, and in that moment, Barry's heart pounded in sync with the looming chaos. With strength gathered from fear, he swung the chair just as the creature leaped. Wood splintered, and Barry felt the force of the collision knock him back, crashing to the floor. Just then, the diner erupted in chaos, as more screams filled the air. The reality was sinking in. This was just the beginning. Outside, the night was alive with howls, and as Barry lay on the ground, he realized there might be more lurking in the dark than he ever imagined. What was the true intent of the Dogman and its pack, and how long before they showed up again? With thoughts racing, Barry understood that survival depended on something else, a more sinister plan that had started to unfold. A plan more terrifying than any story he had ever heard. As the growls mixed with the panicked cries of the townsfolk, Barry's pulse quickened with newfound determination. One thing was clear. It was time to fight back. But would he be prepared for the darkness that was about to engulf them all? Barry struggled to catch his breath, every heartbeat echoing in his ears, as he pushed himself up from the floor. The diner's interior was chaos, a mix of overturned tables, scattered chairs, and terrified faces. Janice stood frozen, a look of horror etching deeper into her features. The shotgun lay just out of reach, its silver barrel glinting under the fluorescent light, but shadows, creeping closer, made it seem miles away. Barry! Janice screamed again, breaking the trance. What do? We fight, he replied, resolve hardening in his throat. He glanced around, searching for anything to use as a weapon. The door frame splintered as the Dogman outside continued its relentless assault, the wood screaming beneath its immense strength. Just as he found a heavy frying pan, another howl pierced the air. It wasn't one of the Dogman. The growl was too low, too guttural. What had he unleashed? Get the shotgun, he urged again, pointing with shaky determination. It's our only chance. With a newfound sense of urgency, Janice darted for the back room where the weapon lay. But as she reached for it, the creature burst through the door, its massive form blocking her escape. It let out a roar that shook the very foundation of the diner, the sound a mix of primal rage and desperation. Janice! Get back! Barry shouted, and without thinking, he flung the frying pan at the Dogman. Metal clanged against bone, and for a moment, it staggered. But roaring back to life, it lashed out, swiping a clawed hand that sent Barry crashing into a steel cooler. Pain flared across his ribs, but he fought through it, fueled by adrenaline and fear. He blinked away stars and surged to his feet, just as Janice emerged from the back, shotgun in hand, panic unmistakable on her face. I've got it. Barry, what do? I point it and pull the trigger. He lunged toward her as the Dogman recovered, its eyes aflame with anger. Janice's hands trembled, and time hung like a noose. Desperation pulled at Barry as the specter of the creature loomed closer, thoughts racing. This had to work. This was the one shot they had. Now Janice! With a roar, the Dogman lunged, closing the distance. Boom! The shotgun fired, an explosive burst shaking the diner. A plume of smoke enveloped the creature for a brief moment, and Barry's heart leapt. Had they done it? But rage ignited in the Dogman's eyes, and it staggered not from the impact but from newfound fury. The creature's skin was tougher than he'd ever imagined, and it lunged again, teeth bared and jaw snapping. "Get back!" Barry yelled, rushing forward. He shoved Janice aside just as the beast barreled past, its sharp claws raking down the wall, splintering wood and plaster. They scrambled back, breathless, and the panic-swept diner erupted once more into screams and confusion. Through the chaos, Barry caught glimpses of the other townsfolk, fear painted on their faces. The reality of the situation weighed on him like a lead weight. This was no ordinary night, this was a fight for survival. "We can't stay here," he shouted over the din. He knew they had to move, had to escape the diner before the Dogman's pack turned their sights on the terrified inhabitants. As he hustled Janice toward the back exit, the creature spun, claws scraping the floor as it turned on them. Barry felt the heat of its breath. "Run," he urged, adrenaline sparking in his veins as they dashed through the service door. Outside, the night was eerily quiet, but they were not safe yet. The shadows loomed, whispering secrets of terror. There were more of them. He could sense it. Time to regroup. But with every heartbeat, the questions grew louder. How many were there? What did they want? And most importantly, how could they fight back? "Where do we go?" Janice gasped, scanning the darkness. "Anywhere but here," Barry replied, eyes darting around. The air felt thick with dread. And just then, the howls echoed again, chilling him to the bone. It was a call, a summoning. They were circling, and the hunt was just beginning. Would they find refuge, or would the Dogman claim them under the cover of darkness? Time slipped as they fled into the night, the shadows hunting them down. The fight was only beginning, and the weight of the impending storm loomed heavy. What would happen when the full moon rose higher in the sky? Would the Dogman truly come for every soul of Pine Hollow? The ground trembled as they sprinted away from the diner, the echoes of chaos fading but not forgotten. Barry's mind raced with fear, every step feeling like an invitation to the darkness waiting just beyond their line of sight. Janice clutched the shotgun so tightly her knuckles turned white, a physical manifestation of her rising panic. "Which way?" she panted, her breath coming in jagged gasps. "Over there." Barry pointed to a narrow path between the diner and an abandoned car lot, its jagged outlines barely visible in the moonlight. "It leads to the forest. We can hide there." He felt the weight of her uncertainty as she hesitated. In the dim glow, he could see fear lurking in her eyes, battling the instinct to run. "Barry, what if they find us? Then we'll make our last stand," he said, urgency twisting his stomach into knots. There was no time for doubt. The howls sounded again, closer this time, hunters on their tail. He knew there was strength in their numbers, but he felt it too. A plummeting sense of hope. Without looking back, they dashed towards the forest's mouth, branches reaching out like claws, eager to reclaim the land from the intruders. The darkness thickened around them, but it also became their cover. As they entered the trees, they slowed, the immediate panic stilling to a tight silence. "Do you think we lost them?" Janice whispered, glancing back, her breath misting in the cool night air. Barry shook his head. "Not yet. We need to keep moving." He could almost feel the creature's presence lingering, circling like a predator. He stepped lightly, careful not to snap any twigs beneath his feet. Yet the soft crackle of underbrush soon broke the stillness. Shadows danced between the trees, blurring the boundary between what was real and what was imagined. They crouched behind a massive oak, its gnarled roots providing a fragile sanctuary. Barry squinted into the darkness, his heart thumping like a war drum. "Do you hear that?" Janice strained to listen, her brows furrowing. A low growl penetrated the silence, scratching at the edges of their nerves. "What is it?" "Something's out there," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Suddenly, a figure broke through the trees, a four-legged beast with long, shaggy fur and glowing eyes that pierced the night like a knife. Barry's stomach dropped. It was only a glimpse before it vanished back into the foliage, but it was enough to set his heart racing again. "Barry," Janice's voice trembled. "What do we do?" "We wait," he whispered, fear gnawing at every nerve. We need to know how many we're dealing with. The howls returned, this time echoing from multiple directions. Panic surged through him. He could feel the encroaching dread like icy fingers crawling up his spine. The creatures were more numerous than he'd ever anticipated. They were not alone. Do you think they know we're here? Janice asked, her eyes wide with terror. Maybe, but we won't let them take us, he said, trying to infuse resolve into his words even as uncertainty twisted his gut. Just then, a rustling sound drew their attention. A shadow slipped closer, low, stalking. His throat tightened. Get ready. They shifted, Barry raising an arm to signal Janice. When suddenly, a flood of dark shapes erupted from the thicket, eyes bright like lanterns in the dark. Run, he shouted, adrenaline propelling him into action. With Janice at his heels, they bolted deeper into the trees, branches clawing at their clothes, the howls closing in like laughter in the darkness. Each breath was a sprint after liberation, but every ounce of spirit felt tapped, strained as if sucked dry. What would happen when the moon reached its zenith? Would it awaken an ancient power among the Dogman? In this moment, all Barry could feel was the weight of the hunt, of fear, and of death's cool breath brushing against the back of his neck. He darted into a ravine, the landscape changing abruptly, but the cries followed. He could almost taste the darkness, thick and suffocating. Where are we going? Janice cried out, voice filled with the dread of not knowing. Anywhere. They can't find us, he said, fear rippling through him. But as they plunged into the depths of the ravine, a flicker of light caught his eye. An old cabin almost swallowed by the woods stood shrouded in shadows, a beacon of possible refuge, or a trap awaiting its next victim. Would they find salvation behind those rotting wooden walls, or was it the final refuge before the storm? The cabin loomed before them, a spectral silhouette against the night sky. Its slanted roof sagged, and rusted nails peeked out like jagged teeth. To Barry, each fractured beam whispered secrets of despair and fear. The wind whistled through broken windows like a mournful ghost, urging them to turn back. Are you sure we should go in there? Janice's voice trembled, betraying her doubts. Look, if we stay out here, we'll be sitting ducks, Barry said, urgency tinging his words. We need to buy some time, figure out our next move. She hesitated, glancing into the impenetrable dark beyond. The howls splintered the air again, unmistakably closer this time. The pounding of her heart echoed in her ears. Okay, let us do it. They crept towards the cabin, the dry leaves crunching underfoot, betraying their approach. As they reached the rotting door, Barry paused, resting his hand on the knob. It felt cold and damp, as if it hadn't been turned in ages. On three he breathed, gnawing at his lip. 1, 2, 3. He twisted the knob and sharply pulled the door open. It creaked painfully, a sound that could very well have been a warning. Barry stepped inside first, Janice following close behind, shotgun ready. The darkness enveloped them, weighing heavy against their backs. Moonlight filtered through the cracked windows, revealing shattered furniture and faded photographs scattered across the dusty floor. Shadows lurked in every corner, whispering tales of abandonment and lost souls. There must be something we can use, Barry murmured, scanning the room. He stepped further in, trying to ignore the crawling sensation of being watched. Something felt off too still. Janice's voice was barely a whisper. She stood frozen by the entrance, her wide eyes reflecting her inner fear. What? Look. Through a broken window, a flicker of movement danced outside, shadows darting in the treeline. Panic surged. They weren't just being hunted. They were surrounded. Get back, Barry hissed, pulling Janice deeper into the cabin. They pressed against the far wall, hearts racing, not daring to breathe. The howls blended together, creating a cacophony of malevolent intent. Are they circling us? Janice asked, her voice trembling. Yeah, it sounds like they're toying with us, Barry replied, his mind racing for a plan. They want us to panic. We can't give in. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed outside, followed by frantic rustling. Something massive slammed against the cabin walls, shaking the very foundation beneath them. What was that? Janice gasped, eyes wide as fear threatened to overwhelm her. I don't know, but I don't think it's one of them. Before he could contemplate the implications, the door banged against its frame, rattling as if something wanted in. He dashed to the nearest window, taking a quick glance outside. His breath hitched. Dark shapes scattered like whispers, merging with the trees. But there, in the moonlight, he caught sight of something larger, a hulking figure, its eyes glowing with an unholy hunger. Barry? Janice breathed, clinging to his arm. It's not just the Dogman, he realized, dread pooling in his stomach. There's something else out there. The door shook again, splintering with screeching against its hinges as the creature seemed to put its full weight into the effort of breaking in. We have to find a way out of here, Barry urged, scanning the room for an escape route. We can't stay and wait to be. The door burst open, splintering the wood and throwing Barry to the ground. The dark silhouette loomed in the doorway, the unmistakable shape of the Dogman. With a snarl that split through the air, it advanced, fangs gleaming under the moonlight. Run! He screamed, grabbing Janice's arm. But before they could retreat, the beast lunged forward, and in that split second, something shattered within the cabin, allowing a swarm of darkness to pour in. The ground seemed to pulse with chaotic energy. As they sprinted past the threshold, another figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, its intentions unclear. Where would they run now? Who or what was waiting just beyond? Barry, what do we do? Janice cried, as the chaos consumed them. But Barry's only response was the pounding of his heart and the churning dread in his gut. The night was far from over. Guttural growls echoed off the cabin walls as Barry and Janice bolted into the forest, nearly tripping over their own feet. The air was thick, suffocating, and the ground felt alive, pulsing beneath them. Behind, the legendary Dogman tore through the fading remnants of their sanctuary, its claws scraping the wood with a fury that sliced through the darkness like a knife. Barry, Janice shouted, her breath hitching as fear gripped her throat. Where do we go? I don't know, he panted, adrenaline coursing through him like fire. Just keep running. Branches slashed at their faces, leaving stinging lines on their skin. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves felt like a death knell. They pushed deeper into the forest, desperately trying to distance themselves from the hell they had just escaped. But the howls behind them were relentless, like a hunting pack closing in with bloodthirsty precision. Suddenly, Barry skidded to a halt. An old hunting lodge loomed in front of them, shrouded by dark shadows and tangled vines. It seemed like a relic abandoned by time and tragedy. The roof sagged under the weight of years, yet a flicker of hope ignited within him. Over there, he gestured toward the lodge, pulling Janice with him. They dashed forward, heartbeats pounding against their ribs in time with their frantic footsteps as they reached the door. Barry hesitated, bracing himself against the weathered frame. It creaked ominously, warning him of secrets locked away. Stay close, he whispered, before pushing the door open with a forceful shove. Inside, the musty air enveloped them, thick with the scent of decay. Moonlight collapsed through the gaps in the wood, revealing scattered gear like a jumble of horror stories left untold. A rusted shotgun propped against the wall caught Barry's eye, the weapon a tempting promise of safety. Look, he pointed, but Janice was still peering into the shadows, her face paling. What if it's not safe? What if it's better than being out there? He cut her off sharply. The howls drew nearer, taunting them as they edged into the room. Quietly, Barry snatched the shotgun, checking it as Janice's gaze darted nervously around the dark corners. With every tick of the clock, tension knotted tighter between them. Where do you think they are? Janice whispered, teeth chattering in the chill of the cabin. Just listen, he instructed, his brow furrowing. The woods outside crackled with movement, the howls now mingling with low growls, a symphony of despair that pressed in on the walls. They're not too far to pinpoint just yet. Then, a colossal crash erupted against the lodge's outer wall, splintering wood and sending debris flying. The ground rattled as if haunted by their fear. Barry, we can't stay here. We need to go, Janice urged, growing frantic. His mind raced, knowing they had limited options. They were trapped, but there was something off about the howling outside. It wasn't just the Dogman anymore. Deeper growls mixed with something distinctly human, creating a terrifying harmony of nightmares. Maybe we can climb to the loft. There might be a way out from there, Barry shouted, already scrambling toward a rotting staircase at the back of the lodge. Right behind you. Janice rushed after him, fear lending her speed. A loud thud announced the Dogman's arrival outside, vicious and bold. Each thud against the sturdy frame made it reverberate like a warning bell. They had to get to the loft. As they ascended, the old wooden steps groaned in protest, straining under their weight. Reaching the attic door, Barry threw it open and squinted through the dark. Was it a way out or just another trap waiting to spring? Just then, a cold shadow shifted behind him. He spun around, heart racing as a chilling laugh echoed through the darkness. It was the figure from the forest, an entity cloaked in shadows that absorbed the light, its eyes glowing maliciously. All Barry could see were those smoldering orbs of menace staring back at him. "Barry, don't!" Janice screamed, but it was too late. The darkness surged forward, swallowing them whole. In that moment of impending doom, Barry's mind swirled with one thought: who or what was in control of the hunt? Their ordeal was spiraling into an abyss beyond understanding. What waited for them at the end was unfathomable. What unseen forces were orchestrating their nightmare? The truth lurked just out of reach, waiting to be revealed. Barry's heart thundered in his chest as the shadow loomed closer, the malevolent eyes narrowing into slits. Janice's scream echoed in his ears, fueling his panic. The air grew impossibly cold, an icy breath creeping along the back of his neck like tendrils of dread. "Run!" he shouted, barely grasping the reality that surrounded them. In an instant, as if the world responded to his plea, he grabbed Janice, yanking her toward a narrow window in the attic. It was a desperate chance. Below them, the howls of the Dogman echoed through the woods like a sinister symphony. Each note seemed to hum with the promise of death. They rushed toward the window, the attic door creaking ominously behind them. The shadow entity remained fixed, its laughter sending tremors through their bones. Barry could feel Janice's breath quickening beside him, her fear intertwining with his own. "Help me," he urged as he shoved his shotgun into her hand. "I'll boost you up." Janice nodded, her eyes wide with terror, and he hoisted her upward, using all his strength to lift her to the ledge. "Go now," he shouted. With a final push, she tumbled out, landing with a soft thud outside. Barry's heart raced as he heard the entity stir behind him. The laughter had stopped. Instead, a low growl replaced it, deep and guttural, vibrating through the floorboards. "Barry, hurry!" Janice's voice was a distant beam of hope. He turned back to the room just as claws raked viciously across the door, splintering the wood, sending pieces flying like shrapnel. With no time left, he lunged for the window, scrambling to fit through the tight space. A sharp pain shot through his shoulder as he squeezed past the frame, but adrenaline drowned out every ounce of pain. He landed in a roll on the damp forest floor, gasping as the night air hit him. Janice was waiting, her eyes scanning the trees, alert and terrified. "There's nowhere to hide out here," she whispered, tugging on his arm. "We have to keep moving." But as they darted into the blackened woods, Barry's thoughts tumbled wildly. The darkness felt heavier here, as if it carried with it the weight of every horrific tale told around a campfire. Despite the peril that pursued them, he couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just running from the Dogman, but from something far greater. Out of nowhere, a blinding flash pierced the sky, a jagged bolt of lightning striking down with the force of a god. The illumination revealed twisted forms in the distance, creatures moving like wraiths through the trees, their movements eerie and unnatural. "What the hell are they?" Janice gasped, choking on her own fear. I don't know," Barry stuttered, instinctively leading her deeper into the woods, uncertainty gnawing at his gut. Pulsating growls echoed from all around, as if the very woods were alive, closing in on them. Then, without warning, A scream erupted from the shadows just off the trail, a sound so raw and chilling that it seemed to split the night. It cut through Barry and Janice, stealing their breaths as they froze, hearts racing. "Barry," Janice whispered, panic-stricken. "What do we do now?" He couldn't reply, swallowed by the din of dread surrounding them. Suddenly, a new scent wafted through the air, smoke and something foul. Compelled by intuition, Barry glanced over his shoulder, but what they saw made his blood run cold. The last flickers of light illuminated a figure emerging from the dark, the red glow spilling from the eyes of the beast. But this time, it wasn't just the Dogman stalking them, it was something far more horrific. It was the embodiment of nightmares, followed by a procession of ghastly shadows dancing at its heels. Their steps quickened as they stumbled backward, stumbling over the thick underbrush. "Keep moving," Barry shouted, dread mingling with a primal instinct to escape. What awaited in the shadows? They had only begun to unravel the truth, but as night deepened, the hunt intensified. Would they uncover the dark secrets buried within this cursed forest? Or would they become just another tale whispered in the wind? Desperation pulsed through Barry's veins, fueling his legs as he and Janice raced through the encroaching darkness. They navigated the gnarled roots and twisted trunks, the damp earth sucking at their shoes, urging them to stop. But halting wasn't an option. Behind them, the growls grew louder, a sickening symphony mixed with the crackling of branches. "Barry, we can't run forever," Janice gasped, stumbling over a root that seemed alive. The fear etched on her face mirrored his own. They had stepped into a nightmare that refused to let them wake. There's gotta be something. A sign, a road. He pulled her along, scanning their surroundings, but every shadow seemed malicious, every rustle taunting. The smell of smoke grew thicker in the air, and it tangled with something rotting, an odor that clawed at his throat. He cast a quick glance over his shoulder. The creature with glowing red eyes was still there, trailing them like a dark omen. But closer now, much too close. With a sudden flash of insight, Barry spotted a toppled tree just ahead. "This way." He led Janice towards it, hoping they could use it as cover. They ducked behind the massive trunk, catching their breath as they peered out into the dark. The growls were closer, resonating through the trees, shaking the leaves. Janice clutched his arm, her nails digging into his skin. He could feel her trembling, matching the shudder of fear that swept through him. "What if it finds us?" she whispered, voice barely a breath. "It won't," he promised, though doubt slithered through him. He had no idea what he was even fighting. The shadows danced like hungry ghosts in the periphery, almost taunting them. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Barry leaned forward, trying to pierce the darkness, and suddenly a shrill scream sliced through the night. It resonated with a haunting familiarity. "That sounded like Shu," Janice hissed, eyes wide. A look of realization crossed her face. "We should help them." But before Barry could respond, a rush of cold air swept around them, making the hair on his arms stand on end. The sounds of the night shifted, the stillness pressing down like the weight of inevitability. "Janice, I don't think we should." Before he could finish, the creature lunged into the clearing, and Barry felt bile rise in his throat. It wasn't just the Dogman. It was bigger, more grotesque. Wrought with sinewy muscles, its fur was matted and dark, but its eyes glowed a fierce crimson, pulsating in the gloom like a heartbeat that echoed with dread. A surge of adrenaline hit Barry. "We need to go. Now." He grabbed Janice, but she hesitated, torn between the cries of the unseen victim and the primal urge to flee. "Barry," she pleaded, desperation rising in her voice. "What if we can save them?" The low growls morphed into a predatory snarl, and Barry's instincts screamed at him to run, dragging them away from the scene that threatened to consume them. Without thinking, he pulled her again, their feet pounding against the earth as they ran. The woods seemed to morph around them. Shadows slithered and twisted, baring teeth and claws. Barry sensed the creature following, closer now, almost at their heels. From behind, a sickening crack echoed, followed by a chilling silence that settled like a shroud. Barry, What if it's even worse ahead? Janice panted, fear anchoring her voice as they skidded to a halt at a fork in the path yawning before them. Then we create our own way, he shouted, veering left where thick underbrush loomed. Whatever it took, they couldn't stay put. But as they plunged deeper into the thickets and shadows, a voice called out, deep and reverberating, laced with an otherworldly cadence. Help me! Time froze as both of them locked eyes, paled in disbelief. Did you hear that? Janice whispered. Yeah. But who or what is it? And at that moment, Barry knew. They hadn't stumbled only into a dark forest, but into the heart of an unfolding terror, where salvation and horror tangled in a deadly grasp. What awaited on that ominous path? Would they push forward into the veil of darkness to confront whatever or whoever called from within? Or had they already crossed a line from which they couldn't return? The darkness clung to Barry and Janice as they stood frozen at the crossroads, rooted by fear but ignited by the instinct to run. Underneath the otherworldly whispers, the growls of the Dogman grew closer, pulsing like a heartbeat in the night. As Barry caught a glimpse of Janice's terrified expression, memories of horror stories raced through his mind, tales of brave souls, swallowed by shadows. Would they become just another ghost tale whispered on a cold night? Barry, please, Janice implored, her voice shaking. What do? We can't just stand here. Listen, he hissed, instinct pulling his gaze toward the whispers. If there are people out there, we have to help. He felt a rage build within him, a desire to push back against fear and darkness as they moved. Dread hung thick in the air around them. Each step into the entwining thickets felt like a plunge into despair. "Isn't this where we saw that thing?" Janice asked, her voice barely a murmur, and Barry nodded, recalling the glimpse of crimson eyes. Could they face whatever was out there? "Let us go," he urged, heart pounding as adrenaline and desperation gripped his limbs. The howls surged in a frenzy, a twisted chant that echoed back their fear. In that moment, the duality of fear and bravado surged dangerously close. Together they pushed forward, unearthing the roots of an age-old terror buried deep within the woods. Then, out of the gloom, they heard it again, a voice, a soft plea woven with despair. "Help me!" Before Barry could process his own fear, he found himself running towards the chilling sound again, driven by some instinctive need to rescue or maybe to confront the source of their torment. Janice hesitated, striving to keep pace as she matched his speed. "Barry, be careful." As they ducked deeper into the underbrush, echoes of the creature's snarls permeated the air around them. "Stay close." His chest tightened. They could not afford to be separated. The moments stretched into eternity as they darted through shadows that danced among ancient trees. Then they stumbled upon a clearing, sudden light breaking against the darkness. At its center lay an altar-like rock studded with the remnants of candles, their wax forms distorted and melted over the history amassed around them. A low hum resonated, harmonizing eerily with the growls behind them. "Barry, we shouldn't be here." Janice voiced the fear that hung between them, the atmosphere thick with foreboding. And in that moment, they caught sight of it, a figure bound to the rock. A tattered, frightened soul with disheveled hair and wide, haunted eyes. The figure tugged at Barry's heart like a puppeteer with too many strings. "Help!" the person cried, voice trembling with agony. Barry took a step forward, wanting nothing more than to break the bonds that constrained them. "Who is that?" Janice asked, hesitating as shadows glimmered from behind the trees. "Just a person, someone who needs our help," he breathed, even as doubts roared within him. But it was far too late to turn back. Deep in his gut, he felt the undeniable shift of danger creeping closer as he drew closer to the figure. The air thickened with tension, their surroundings twisted as the shadows grew darker, edges sharp enough to slice through certainty. A growl reverberated around them, pulsating with hatred and hunger. Suddenly, the screeching howl echoed, a cacophony of curses that bathed the clearing in malevolence. The Dogman was close, far too close. With a quick snap of back-and-forth glances, Barry and Janice recognized the truth: they were hunting and being hunted in turn. "Let us go. Now!" Barry shouted, adrenaline coursing as he yanked Janice's arm. They had to escape, They had to survive. The bonds holding the person on the rock were dark, twisted like roots that fed fear. "No, I can't leave them," Janice pleaded, but that plea felt like a noose tightening around them. The momentary surge of compassion clashed against reason. The darkness was hungry, and the hunt was relentless. "Janice," Barry shouted, desperation mingling with fury. "We can't save everyone. We have to save ourselves first." She stared between Barry and the pleading figure, the weight of decision bearing down. But the howl resounded again, drowning out the human voice, and panic fueled their feet. "Run!" With one last look at the pleading eyes, they turned on their heels and fled into the dark embrace of the forest. Branches lashed at their skin, ground fell away beneath them, and the howls tore through the night like a ripping veil. They knew the truth now. There was no safety as they weaved through trees. Barry could feel the shadows closing in, wrapping around them like the coldest blanket of horrors. The howls morphed into laughter, dark echoes mocking their escape. "Barry, I can't keep going," Janice gasped, pushing against the fatigue that clung to her like a shadow-esque whisper. "Don't stop, please." His voice trembled, fear coursing through flesh and bone. The figures lurked close behind predators hungry for the taste of their final moments. A sharp pang of helplessness enveloped Barry, a truth that struck like a pixie dagger. They might not escape. A clearing emerged ahead, wider, brighter, and yet frozen in dread. Barry rushed forward, teeth clenched as wild hope battled against despair. And then he saw it, a faint glimmer of light through the trees, hinting at salvation. "Over there," Barry shouted, lungs burning as they sprinted toward hope. But before he reached the source, a sudden presence burst forth. A dark mass sprang from the treeline, clawed appendages reaching out like talons. "Run, Janice! Get to the light!" he howled, pushing her ahead, the decaying woods giving way to paths of light, but shadows encircled them, closing in at the edge of the forest. As shadows clambered excitedly behind them, a flicker of something warm washed over Barry. He realized the truth that would never leave him. The woods were alive with the voices of those lost. "Go!" he shouted, pushing Janice, clawing for the light, the warmth of humanity beyond the grasp of darkness. With a desperate lunge, they broke through, hitting the ground on the other side, breathing in fresh air, almost tasting freedom. Yet the howls of the shadows were a promise that they would never truly escape. Behind them stood the dark forest, haunted by memories that would never fade, an entanglement of truths and fears no one would believe. The air shifted. The hunt would continue. They had evaded this dance of death, for now. But the darkness was relentless, and the Dogman, its hunger unquenched, would return. A final glance into the darkness promised that these woods were just the beginning. "Barry," Janice whispered, trembling as the weight of survival pressed down like a leaden cloak. "What do we do now?" He looked into her frightened eyes and realized the truth. There was no ending, only a new beginning to dread. "We survive," he replied, gripping her hand tightly. "Together." And as the chilling wind whispered through the trees, they took steps into the unknown, hearts pounding, a reminder that fear was never truly gone, only waiting to return. If you've made it this far, you need to subscribe now. Don't waste another second and join the family. Smash that like button now to help fuel the stories coming your way. You've got a voice, so flood the comments section with your theories and reactions about this wild ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends. After all, they'll want to see just how dark the woods can get too.